I'm not the kind of guy who makes scenes. That's probably why this whole thing went on for as long as it did. I grew up in a family where you don't throw chairs, you don't slam doors, you don't raise your voice unless the house is literally on fire. You just get things done, quietly, cleanly, the way good employees are supposed to. And for most of my career, that worked. It kept me liked, it kept me useful, it kept me safe. Until the day it didn't. The meeting that blew everything open didn't start like an ambush. It started like any other Monday all hands. Cardboard coffee, bad lighting, that undertone of exhaustion you can feel in a room full of adults pretending they slept well. I took my usual seat, not too close to the front, not hiding in the back, opened my notebook and told myself I was overreacting. My boss, Martin, had been weird the last month. Sure, but he was always weird. A man who smiles like he's rehearsing for a TED Talk, but talks to you like you're holding him back from greatness. Still, that morning, there was a pressure in the air I couldn't shake. Something in the way he walked to the podium. Too confident, too relaxed, like he had a secret he couldn't wait to unwrap in front of us. I felt it in my chest, a slow tightening, but I kept my face neutral. That's what I do. Neutral, calm, steady. People like me are easy to use. If you'd told me 6 months earlier that Martin would try to take me down in front of the entire company, I would have laughed. We weren't friends, but we worked well together. Or at least, I thought we did. I handled operations. He handled vision, which meant I cleaned up the messes his decisions created, and he took the credit in any room that mattered. I didn't resent it, not at first. When you're good at your job, you get comfortable being the quiet one behind the curtain. And Martin loved having a curtain. It started small, a joke here, a dig there. Grant's great at spreadsheets, he'd say, like it was a punchline. Or Grant gets emotional about timelines, when I reminded him that client deadlines weren't flexible just because he wished they were. I didn't push back. I never push back right away. I observe, I adapt, I document. But it built up. Him showing up late to client calls and blaming the delay on me. Him telling upper management that he negotiated the new vendor contract even though I'd spent 6 weeks doing it. Him rewriting project notes to make his oversight look like my mistake. The worst was the Friday meeting a month before everything blew up. A client asked why certain deliverables were late. Martin chuckled, glanced at me, and said, "Grant's been swamped. I keep telling him to slow down, but you know how he is." And everyone laughed. Everyone. Except me. I didn't even smile. I just looked down at my notes and added another bullet point to the private file I'd started. Pattern of public misrepresentation. Third example this quarter. I didn't know then how much that file was going to matter. 2 weeks later, the situation escalated. A major client project hit a snag because Martin ignored 3 separate warnings I'd given him. He dismissed each one. "Don't be dramatic, Grant. We'll fix it later. It's fine." Except it wasn't fine. The client found the discrepancy before we could buffer it, and suddenly Martin was sending me messages at 11 p.m., asking why I hadn't escalated it sooner. That was the moment something in me shifted. Not anger, clarity. I forwarded the chain to my personal email, then I forwarded the timeline, then the Slack screenshots, then the voice memo he sent saying, "Just patch it, they won't notice." People think whistleblowing is dramatic, loud, heroic. It's not. It's quiet. It's methodical. It's the moment you realize someone's going to blame you for a fire they started, and you're not going to let them. So I started collecting. And that brings me back to the meeting. Martin clicked through a few slides, talking about revenue, initiatives, company culture, all the usual noise. I tried to breathe normally, but my body already knew something was coming. 30 minutes in, he switched to a new slide. Red text, a title that made my stomach drop. Performance concerns and corrective actions. I felt 20 pairs of eyes shift in my direction before my name even appeared. He didn't ease into it. He didn't soften the blow. He went straight for drama, talking about missed deadlines, poor communication, a concerning pattern of negligence, lies, all lies. And then he did it. The line that changed everything. Effective immediately, he said, with that rehearsed calm he likes to wear. Grant is suspended pending review. I heard a gasp, a whisper, a chair creaking, my own heartbeat. I didn't stand. I didn't panic. I didn't even blink. I clapped. One sharp, deliberate clap. Then another. Then 3 more. Slow, calm, precise. The room froze. Martin's face twitched like he wasn't sure if this was humiliation or applause. "Thank you, Martin," I said, loud enough for the whole room. "I've been waiting for you to make this official." A ripple moved through the crowd. Someone exhaled too loudly. Someone else muttered, "What the hell?" I closed my notebook gently. The same notebook that now held 6 months of timestamps, discrepancies, directives, and receipts that contradicted every word Martin just spoke. "And before you continue," I said, still calm, still steady, "I hope you also informed HR about the compliance packet I submitted this morning. It would be awkward if they heard it from someone else." Silence. Not the normal kind. The kind that means something has gone very, very wrong for someone, and for once that someone wasn't me. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and waited. Because I knew one thing with absolute certainty. That meeting was only the beginning. They say you can feel a room turn before anyone speaks. It's true. Martin just stood there, one hand still on the clicker, slide behind him screaming "performance concerns" in red, and his smile went brittle at the edges. "Grant," he said slowly, "this isn't the time or place." "It's exactly the time and place," I answered. "You made it that way when you put my name on a slide." Someone near the back coughed. Our HR director, Lila, shifted in her chair. She hadn't known. I could tell. If she'd known, she would have been at the front, on his left, not buried in the second row with her laptop half open and no folder in her hands. "Let's move this offline," she said, voice tight. "Martin, can we pause this part of the presentation?" Martin tried to laugh it off, like the last 30 seconds were just an awkward joke at a party. "We'll talk right after this, Grant. Sit tight." I closed my notebook. "No, I'm good. You said I'm suspended. That means I shouldn't be here, right?" Every eye in the room ping-ponged between us. My hands weren't shaking. I noticed that like it was someone else's body. "Okay, that's enough," Martin snapped, dropping the cool boss act. "You're dismissed from the meeting. We'll discuss your behavior." "With HR present," I cut in, "and legal, if they'd like. They've got my documentation already." Lila's head snapped toward me. "Your what?" "The report," I said. "Submitted at 8:13 a.m. through the compliance portal." Subject line: "Pattern of retaliation and falsified performance records." I assume you've seen it. The silence stopped being awkward and became evidence. That was my first small wave of satisfaction, watching reality catch up to his performance. Not revenge, just alignment. "I think we should take a 5-minute break," our COO said finally. She was sitting against the wall, arms crossed, the way she always sat when she wanted to hear everything before choosing a side. "Everyone grab some coffee. Martin, Lila, my office. Grant, you too." Chairs scraped. People stood too quickly. The room fell into that low, buzzing murmur that means nobody knows what to do with their hands or their faces. A few co-workers avoided looking at me. A couple gave me the briefest, guilty little nods, like I knew something was off, but not brave enough to say it out loud. I walked to the door without rushing. If I'd moved any faster, I might have started running. In the COO's office, the door closed with a soft click. Suddenly, it was just the 4 of us. Co-HR, my boss, and me. No audience, no slides. Just carpet and glass and a stack of legal pads on a credenza. "Okay," the COO said, looking at Martin first. "Explain." Martin launched into it immediately, like he'd rehearsed this part in the mirror. "We've had ongoing issues with Grant's performance. Missed deadlines. Poor communication with key clients. Resistance to feedback. I've been documenting for months. Today was the point where corrective action was necessary." Is that true? The COO asked without turning her head. Or is that a story you wrote for today? I set my notebook on the table, opened it to a page already flagged with a small sticky tab. May I? I asked. She nodded. I've also been documenting for months, I said. Differences between verbal directives and written records. Projects where I raised risks weeks in advance, and those warnings were ignored. Instances where Martin misrepresented my work to clients and leadership. If you check the report in your system, you'll see attachments. Emails, Slack exports, timestamps from our project tools, even a recording or two. Recording? Martin repeated, voice going sharp. Every stand-up for the last quarter has been on Zoom, I said. You told us you were recording for training purposes. I just downloaded the files you already made. Lila opened her laptop, fingers moving faster than I'd ever seen them. Her eyes narrowed. I don't have a notification about a suspension, she said quietly. Martin, did you coordinate this action with HR before the meeting? He hesitated. Just a second. But in that second, everyone heard the truth. I informed you last week that we might need to escalate, he said. That's not the same as following procedure, she replied, professionalism cracking a little. Grant, you said you filed a compliance report. Under what category? Retaliation, harassment, and falsification of performance data, I answered, including attempts to shift blame for the incident with the Axiom account. I watched the COO's eyes flicker. She knew that name. That was money, not feelings. Walk me through that, she said. So I did. Not with speeches, with dates, screenshots, warnings I'd sent. His replies. The night he messaged me to patch it. They won't notice. The call where I'd told him we needed to inform the client immediately, and he'd said, absolutely not. We'll handle it internally. The next morning, when the client found the issue themselves, and Martin sent an email to leadership implying I'd missed a key checkpoint, by the time I finished, Martin's bravado had drained down into his collar. That's one side, he said weakly. He's cherry-picking. He's providing evidence, Lila cut in. We'll need to verify, obviously, but this isn't nothing. There it was, not vindication yet, but recognition. The first brick in the wall between us. The COO folded her hands. Here's what's going to happen, she said. Effective immediately, Grant. You are on paid administrative leave pending the outcome of this investigation. That means you do not work. You do not access client systems, and you do not communicate with staff about this case. HR and our external counsel will review your report, Martin's documentation, and any relevant records. So I am suspended, I said. Officially. Yes, she replied, but not for the reasons you saw on that slide. I nodded. That's all I needed to know. She turned to Martin. As for you, you will have no further direct contact with Grant. Any communication goes through HR. You will provide your own documentation by end of day, and until HR has reviewed these claims, you are not to take any unilateral action that could be construed as retaliation. Am I clear? He opened his mouth, then closed it. Understood, he said, but his jaw was locked so hard I could see the muscle jumping. For legal purposes, Lila added, I'm going to reiterate, any attempt to interfere with this process, deleting messages, coaching staff on what to say, altering reports, will be treated as a serious violation of company policy. We'll be pulling backups from IT anyway. That was the moment I felt the first real shift, not victory, just the weight moving off my chest onto the table between us, where everyone could see it. They walked me back to my desk like I was radioactive. My co-workers pretended to work while their eyes followed us. I shut down my laptop, slid it into its dock, and left my mug exactly where it was. It felt wrong to take it. Like stealing something from a crime scene. At the elevators, Martin finally spoke, just loud enough for me to hear. You think this is going to end well for you? He muttered. I don't think, I said. I document. The doors opened. I stepped in. He stayed out. On the ride down, alone in the mirrored box, my stomach finally caught up with me. Hands steady, knees not so much. Leave, I reminded myself. Breathe. Let the process run. You did your part. Outside, the air felt different, colder, even though it hadn't changed. I walked to my car like I was walking out of someone else's life. At home, I sat at the kitchen table, opened my personal laptop, and reread the compliance receipt. Case number, timestamp, acknowledgement that my complaint triggered protection under our whistleblower policy. Until that morning, it had been just words on a screen. Now it was the only net between me and a very long fall. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. We need to talk. Don't do anything stupid. Martin. I blocked the number without replying. Then I texted a friend who worked in employment law and sent him the case number, just in case I suddenly stopped existing in the system. It's funny. People think the big explosion is the worst part. For me, it wasn't the meeting. It wasn't even hearing the word suspended out loud. The worst part was the waiting that came after. Those first hours when you're technically safe, but your whole life is sitting in someone else's inbox. That afternoon, HR called to schedule an official interview. External counsel would be present. They wanted me to walk them through everything in detail with dates and names. I agreed. I'd been rehearsing this in my head for months without realizing. As I hung up, a strange calm settled in. The damage to my reputation inside that building had already been done. Martin had made sure of that. But out here, away from his stage, I finally had something he couldn't match. Time, documentation, and people who were paid to care about facts more than charm. I didn't know yet how far this investigation would go. I only knew one thing for sure. The story he'd written about me wasn't the one that was about to be read. People assume investigations are loud, dramatic, flashing lights, raised voices, someone being marched out in handcuffs. But real corporate chaos is quiet. It starts as a change in temperature, a shift in how people greet you, a sudden tightness in the smiles of people who used to wave across the office. My interview with HR and the external attorney lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of dates, screenshots, Zoom timestamps, files I'd labeled months ago because some part of me already knew where this was heading. They asked careful questions, not probing for gossip, but for patterns. That word came up again and again. Pattern, evidence, consistency. Every time they asked something I couldn't answer with certainty, I said, "Check the logs." And they did. They typed fast. They highlighted. They nodded. But the real chaos began the moment I left that room. Because investigations don't just ask questions. They stir people. By the next morning, 3 coworkers texted me from numbers I didn't recognize. "Hey, did something happen? HR is calling everyone." I didn't know it was this serious. They're asking about Axiom. They pulled our Slack history, the whole channel. Martin must have felt the walls shift the same way I did because he made his first mistake before lunch. He tried to casually gather the team in our project room. Light voice, nervous energy. I wasn't there, but I heard afterward. He opened with, "Let's all make sure we're aligned if HR asks questions. We don't want misunderstandings." Nobody likes being coached, especially when they can feel something burning under the floorboards. Later, 2 different coworkers separately told HR about it, unprompted. Pressure reveals character, and Martin's first instinct was to manipulate the narrative. But now people were watching him, not me. By noon, IT froze several of his project folders for routine audit lockdown. The phrase sounds harmless, but it's not. It's digital handcuffs. At 3 p.m., I got an email from HR. "Please be advised that we have expanded the scope of the investigation." No explanation, no details, just those words. That was the moment I realized something bigger than my complaint had surfaced. The next day, Jenna, one of our client relations managers, asked if we could talk. She'd been at Axiom meetings. She'd seen the timeline. When she sat across from me in the cafe, she didn't smile. "Grant, I need to tell you something." I didn't want to get involved, but HR called me today. And when I told them what really happened during the Axiom rollout, they asked me to provide a formal statement. I waited. She exhaled shakily. This isn't just about you. Her version of the story matched mine, except it was worse. A week before the Axiom issue exploded, she'd told Martin the same warning I had. He'd dismissed her too, and days later he'd implied to leadership that she had failed to escalate properly. Two people, same treatment, same cover-up, patterns. That night, I sat at home on my couch, lights off, staring at the muted TV. My phone buzzed. An email from HR. Please refrain from communicating with Martin. All contact must be coordinated through HR. A chill went through me, meaning he tried something, meaning the boundaries had tightened, meaning the investigation was no longer a simple, he said, it had teeth. The next morning, chaos bloomed. A calendar invite went out to every manager in the department. Mandatory Manager's Compliance Briefing, 11 a.m. Martin wasn't the one presenting. The head of legal was. One teammate texted me, "He looks bad, man. Pale, sweating. He keeps checking his phone." Another, "They're pulling emails, all of them." Another, "Did you know he told HR you were emotionally unstable? They asked us if we'd ever seen you raise your voice." I laughed. Not bitterly, but in disbelief. I hadn't raised my voice at anyone in 10 years. People think injustice is the painful part. It is. But there's a moment, right before the tide fully turns, where you watch someone who used to tower over you start shrinking. And that moment is its own kind of shock. But that wasn't the breaking point. The breaking point came the next day. I was making coffee in my kitchen when I got the call. "Grant," the COO said, "I want to give you a heads up before you hear this from anyone else. During the investigation, we uncovered additional discrepancies in Martin's reporting. Some involve client data. Some involve staff assessments. We are escalating further." I didn't speak, not because I was shocked, but because I'd finally reached the part of the story where everything aligned with the instincts I'd been swallowing for months. "There will be interviews with the board," she continued. "HR has advised Martin not to contact any employees directly. If he reaches out, let us know immediately." I hung up and sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. I should have felt triumphant. I didn't. I felt the weight of every moment I'd stayed quiet to avoid conflict. Every time I'd smoothed something over, fixed something quietly, absorbed something that wasn't mine. Every time I let someone else's version of events become the truth, because correcting it would have made me difficult. And here's the thing about being the quiet one. When you finally do speak, people pay attention. But the real turning point, the real shift, came on a Thursday afternoon, 4 days after the meeting. I was home on leave, answering no emails, touching nothing, when I got a text from an unknown number. It wasn't Martin this time. It was one of the directors. "Are you available for a call, off the record?" I hesitated, then agreed. When he spoke, his voice was lower than usual. "Grant, there's something you should know. Several employees have come forward with additional accounts. Not just about Axiom, not just about you. This has gone beyond any one situation, and frankly, I'm not sure Martin understands how deep he's in." My grip tightened on the phone. He continued. "Internal audit found altered timestamps on documents, client deliverables modified after sign-off, and behavior patterns that align with retaliatory management." I closed my eyes. Retaliatory, patterns, altered, words I'd lived under for months now lived in someone else's mouth. "Listen," he said softly. "I can't give you details, but things are going to move fast from here." And they did. The next morning, Martin was escorted out of the building for the first time. Not terminated, not yet, but removed from department access while the board reviewed findings. Colleagues texted me the moment it happened. He looked like he'd been hit. He didn't even get to clear his desk. They locked his badge mid-swipe. That was the moment everything snapped, the point where the investigation stopped being an internal matter and became a structural event. A shift in the power grid of the company. Some part of me wanted to feel bad for him. I didn't. But I didn't celebrate either. Instead, I sat down, opened my laptop, looked at the compliance receipt again, and realized something that genuinely startled me. This wasn't revenge. This was repair. Not just for me, for everyone who'd been stepped on, blamed, overlooked, or manipulated by someone who thought charm was a shield, and position was protection. Late that night, with the house quiet and my phone finally still, another thought settled in. Heavier, but cleaner than anything I'd felt so far. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. I was finally visible. The morning everything ended didn't announce itself. No dramatic call. No flashing subject line. Just a meeting request that slid into my inbox like any other calendar update. Final review. HR plus legal, plus COO 10:30 a.m. No agenda, no notes, just the time. I showered, shaved, put on the same button-down I'd worn the day Martin suspended me. Not as symbolism, I'm not that poetic, but because I didn't want to look like I'd been waiting for this moment, even though I had. At 10:28, I clicked the link. The screen opened to 3 squares: HR Director, External Counsel, COO, all neutral faces, all business. No Martin. "Grant," the COO said, "thank you for joining. We'll keep this as straightforward as possible." Straightforward. In corporate language, that means it's over. After reviewing documentation from all parties, conducting interviews, and auditing relevant project records, we've reached a conclusion. She glanced at HR, who nodded. Your complaint was substantiated. Fully. I didn't move, didn't blink, just let the words settle, clean as a landing. External counsel slid a folder into view, tapping it twice. The investigation confirmed that several performance reviews and deliverable records were altered by Martin without authorization. We found discrepancies in project timelines, missing escalation notices you sent, and misattributed responsibilities. In other words, he lied, and they caught every lie. There were also verified accounts from other employees describing similar behaviors. HR added gently. Retaliation, misrepresentation, verbal undermining. She didn't need to say more. I already knew those stories too well. The COO folded her hands. As of this morning, Martin has been terminated for cause. Effective immediately. A short, clean sentence. No drama, no commentary. Just ended. I felt a flicker in my chest. Not joy, not relief. Something quieter. Something like a knot finally unlocking after months of being pulled tight. He will not return to the premises, she continued. Security escorted him out at 8:12 a.m. His system access was revoked, his badge deactivated. I imagined the scene. Martin arriving early, as he always did when he wanted to look important. Badge tap, red light, confusion, the slow realization, then security stepping forward. No yelling, no spectacle. Just consequences. Exactly the thing he thought he was immune to. We want to acknowledge the impact this has had on you, HR said, voice soft but sure. Your professionalism throughout this process was noted by every member involved. You handled a difficult situation with clarity and restraint. Clarity. Restraint. Words I hadn't expected to hear from anyone. Then came the part I had expected. As for your role here, the COO said, you've been fully cleared. We would like you to resume your position with a promotion to senior operations lead and a salary adjustment to reflect your contribution and leadership. I stared at the screen. We believe you're an asset to this institution, she added. We want you here, Grant. It should have felt like victory. Maybe for someone else it would have. But I thought back to the months before this. The late nights rewriting broken timelines, the jokes at my expense, the way I'd been shrinking myself to make the environment feel survivable. And something inside me said, no. Thank you, I said, but I won't be returning. Even HR blinked. I've appreciated the process, and I respect the verdict, I continued. But the truth is, I'm done holding up structures that collapse the minute someone stops being quiet. The COO didn't look surprised. Not really. Leaders know when someone has outgrown the space they were surviving in. We understand, she said. Would you consider a transition plan? A separation package? I already have another offer, I replied. I accepted it yesterday. A small smile tugged at the lawyer's mouth, the kind of expression someone makes when they witness a clean ending. We spent 10 more minutes finalizing the administrative details. Timelines, final paycheck, unused PTO, practical things, adult things. And then the call ended with simple goodbyes. No bitterness, no apologies, just closure. When the meeting closed, the reflection of my own face stayed on the dark screen for a moment. I looked lighter, not triumphant, just here, present in my own life again. I drove to the office one last time to return my laptop and badge. The lobby was quiet. HR met me downstairs, handed me a small box with the few things I'd left behind. A notebook, a charger, a pen I'd borrowed from Jenna months ago. I hope your next team treats you better, she said softly. They will, I answered, and I knew I wasn't tempting fate. I was stating a fact. As I stepped outside, the automatic doors opened with a hush. Sunlight hit me full in the face. There was a breeze, faint but real, and for the first time in a long time, I felt absolutely no urge to look back at the building. In the parking lot, I saw him. Not close, far across the street, standing beside a car I didn't recognize. Martin. Arms crossed, eyes hollowed out, shoulders slumped. A security escort hovered a few feet away, making sure he didn't re-enter the property. He wasn't yelling, wasn't pacing. He was just still. Our eyes met for half a second. I didn't smile, didn't glare, didn't nod. There was nothing left to say to a man who'd written his own ending. I got into my car, turned the key, and drove away. No dramatic burnouts, no last looks, just forward. My new job started the following Monday. Smaller company, calmer people. The kind of place where deadlines are real, communication is honest, and nobody raises their voice unless they're cheering for someone. On my first day, my manager introduced himself, shook my hand, and said, "We're glad you're here. Tell us what you need to do, your best work." I didn't realize how much those words mattered until I heard them. The first week felt strange, peaceful in a way that made me aware of how exhausting my old normal had been. I slept better, ate better, walked taller. I stopped checking my phone for crisis messages that weren't coming. One evening I sat on my balcony with a drink, watching the streetlights glow. My new laptop was inside, my phone silent, my calendar mercifully empty, and the thought came to me, not triumphant, not sharp, just true. Peace isn't loud, it's what's left when the noise finally stops. People love stories about revenge, about winning, about dramatic payback. But what I got wasn't revenge. It was something quieter, something steadier, something I didn't even know I'd been missing. A life that didn't ask me to shrink to fit someone else's chaos. A future that wasn't built on fear. A version of myself that didn't need to clap back just to be heard. When I turned in my badge, I walked out with empty hands. But somewhere along the way, without noticing, I'd taken back something bigger. My dignity, my clarity, my voice. And that's the part Martin could never take from me, no matter how many slides he put my name on. He wrote the lie, I wrote the ending. And I didn't need applause for that one.